everyone. Some of you already know me. I'm Zenon's mum, and I thank you for inviting me here to speak and for your support that you've been giving to Zenon. As you know, Zenon is in, I call it Elizabeth's house. That's down in Dorset, and he could remain there at her pleasure for the next 15 months if he's unlucky. If he's very lucky, we may have him back by the end of the month. What was Zenon's crime? He threw a stick, and I'm sorry, I have to correct you, he did also throw a bear tin. So, they described these as missiles, and the judge decided that the police had a job to do and he had no right to interfere in their work. They were outnumbered, and so therefore he had to have a custodial sentence. The spirit of violent disorder legislation, interpreted under the light of the actual condition, supposes unjustifiable violence as the legal reasoning requires. I do not believe this was the case in the students' demonstration. Initially, Zenon was given poor advice and pleaded guilty to violent disorder, not fully understanding the implications. He felt this plea would at worst give him a sentence of probation and probably some community work. Never for one moment did Zenon or any of his friends or family ever expected him to be sentenced to 15 months. This level of sentencing does not fit the crime, and thankfully some of the students who pleaded not guilty have been able to be acquitted on the charge of violent disorder. Zenon went on this march with no other intention but in support of students, present, future, lecturers, and the universities, and for all the other education establishment to protest at the government's blatant disregard for the basic human right, and that is of a free education for all. Free education is a clause of the written constitution. The right to higher education can only be state-owned, or by institutions owned by the state, and should no way become a business. Slowly, by the introduction of these higher tuition fees and all the cuts, this seems as what's going to happen in the future. I myself was one of the lucky people who benefited from a no tuition fee system. In 1998, when tuition fees was first introduced of £1,000, nobody actually really took much notice. Slowly it crept up to £3,000, and Zenon's eldest sister came under that schedule, and even I didn't actually bat an eyelid. When it then rose in October 2010 to 9,000, it seemed that promises were broken. I fully supported Zenon's decision to go on the march. We live in a democracy. He was taught from a very young age that not to be aware of what was going on politically, you were an idiot. And this was sort of pumped into him because his father is Greek, and in ancient times, when you were a free citizen, part of your process was to actually participate in discussions and any issues that was going on at the time. If you chose to stay in your own home, mind your own business, that's where Ilthiothea came from, and the second meaning was idiot. So Zenon's father pumped into him the idea that you had to be involved in politics. He himself was involved in the overthrow of the Greek colonels in the 1970s. And Zenon was taken on marches from a very young age. And so he knew how to go on peaceful protest. He knew what was legally the right thing to do. Now this word, violent disorder, violence is a really, really strong word. Throwing at the stick at the police in riot gear, who were kettling protesters, causing physical harm to young people. in this so-called democratic society, I ask, who should be charged, the students or the police? Well, that's a question that's been put out there, and as far as I know, no officer of the students' protest have been charged so far with violent disorder. I witnessed the arrest of Zenon. Unfortunately, Zenon didn't come home when he should have done, and I knew something was wrong. And as I turned the television on, I actually saw Zenon being arrested on Newsnight. And he was being held down on the ground by 4 burly policemen with his head shoved onto the floor. They were, according to the judge, doing their job. It's quite sad that one of the students who Zenon actually helped to the first aid was hit by a policeman. She stood next to Zenon in court and was given 10 months custodial in Holloway. I was absolutely shocked when we were in the court. I expected Zenon to be given some form of punishment, possibly being sent into the community to do some work that they perceived to be justified for him being at the student protest. It was right for him to protest that day. Education is not and should never be allowed to become a business. The cost of these cuts and measures will impact on all of you, the students, lecturers, courses, and future generations of young people. Social mobility and goals are slowly going down the drain. It's almost as if we are now regressing. Zenon had strong opinions about this issue, and by participating, he has had to pay a very high price.